Israel and the Galilee. And let's see what we're dealing with. It says 7:56 in the morning, and I can't see in this light. Let's see. It's the 7th of June, and we're going to talk about what's going on with Trump's latest. There's perhaps $100 billion of seized Iranian money around the world, and Trump is going to give that money to the Gulf states to pay for the repair of the damages that Iran did to them. But the Gulf states does not include Israel. Gulf states is those that are on the Persian Gulf, not Israel. Well, we took damage. Yeah. But does Trump think we're just another bunch of stinking Jews that don't deserve anything? Well, by his words, no. But by his actions? Why would he give them the money? They were fighting against Iran, some of them anyway, like we were, but not as much, of course. But why would he do that? Because he's making a statement to the other people in America, the deep state, that he's against Israel. You tell me different. Tell me why Israel should not get any of the war reparation money when we suffered damage from Iran, when we were helping America as an ally attack Iran. You tell me why we shouldn't get it, because I can't come up with a reason other than Trump doesn't like the Jews. And prophecy shows us that this is going to develop and get worse over time. Okay, I'm going to go through some other things with the war. I've got a pretty good recap on what happened the other day with the fighting. I don't think there was any fighting last night with Iran and America. Surprise, surprise. We'll go through these things, and then we're going to deal with the old Greek translations, which is basically this Septuagint, which goes back to about 250 years before Yeshua came to Israel on earth. And they don't like it when I say when he came to Israel. They want me to say when he came to earth. Well, he came to Israel, didn't he? Did he go to Asia? Did he go? No, he stayed in Israel. Well, they don't like that. Okay. Yes, do you remember when Yeshua went to Washington, D.C.? No, he didn't go there. It wasn't called Washington, D.C. Anyway, what else? So this is the oldest work we have. They took the fragments, they put it into the Codex Sinaiticus and the Codex Vaticanus around the years 3 to 400 AD. The King James Old Testament is based on the Masoretic text. The oldest version of the Masoretic text that exists, that's known anywhere to exist, is 900 AD. So these works are 500-600 years older, but based that's when they just assembled all the fragments together and transcribed it. Scribes made a new Bible. These were Christian scribes. There was no Catholic Church then. Didn't exist. There wasn't any real serious corrupt churches back then. They just transcribed it over, okay, into these codexes. Codexes really means a book, okay? And have nothing to do with the Catholic Church, which didn't exist at that time, okay? So what's going on with this? Well, it's the oldest source that we have, and they have a New Testament also, which is impossible to be going back before 250, before the time Yeshua on earth. There was no New Testament, so how could it be? You know, but they got pretty decent Old, New Testament in there. Okay? So, what are we dealing with here? Well, what are we dealing with? We're dealing with the oldest, probably most honest manuscripts we could get our hands on today. And I'm having them translated by AI with very, very dictatorial demands on AI to only use secular sources. And what comes out is truly astounding. And we've been doing this for a few weeks. Not only does it give us a new perspective into the Bible, but it also helps. I'm reminding you of prophecy because I'm predominantly doing prophetic passages. So today we're going to do Revelation 6, and I tell you, it's not that far from the King James. Differences for sure. Very, very, but chapter 6 of Revelation, there's differences, but you'll see. It's pretty close to King James. And we're going to do Revelation 24, Matthew 24, so sorry, which is not very close to the King James. Okay? That's what's on the agenda today, and spiritual warfare. And I'll explain to you some things that's going on in Israel that's not nice, and I'm going to raise your paranoia level about Trump unless you just refuse to believe Trump could do anything wrong. And I could appreciate people in America, that's sort of like their last hope, but he's just another one of them, or he wouldn't be there. Okay? And a lot of people just refuse to believe that, and that's bad because they start rejecting knowledge, and that's bad because Yeshua said, when you reject knowledge, I'll reject you. Knowledge meaning the scriptures, I'm sure. Okay. I'm sure he doesn't care about you reading the New York Times. However, you're supposed to be watching too, so we do watch. That we do. Okay, there's fake news floating around today too that I'm going to talk about pertaining to Ecuador. I'm going to turn this over here. All right. Thank you, moderators. And I'm going to put a post up in the chat, which is probably going to take seconds, not minutes. Done. I just got to check for typos. And I got it. And now I got to pin it. And we're finished. Come on. Where is it? There it is. Okay, we got it done. And let me just make sure it went up. And it did. Everything is good. Okay. Being an Old Testament, New Testament, Bible believing site, I'm going to do some praise. And I have no idea who joins in or doesn't join in. And no control. Okay. There is no God like Jehovah. 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 There is no Messiah like Yeshua. 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 Okay, so what's going on? Let us let me go through it. I don't have a tremendous amount of news. Where is my news? Did it go away? No, I don't think I got it up here. Hope I got it. Alright, delete this. I don't believe I have any prayer requests today, but I'm checking. And nothing. Okay. That's fine. People have them or they don't have them. There are days when there are no prayer requests. Iran is demanding that America gives them $12 billion, not M million, B billion, 12 billion in immediate cash from the approximate $100 billion frozen assets that are frozen around the world for sanctions before they're going to do any talks. So Washington, of course, rejected this. Trump isn't going to say, yeah, I'll give you $12 billion and we can sit down and talk and you can call me Barack Obama. You know, he's not going to do that. So that's not going to happen. And Iran is making one good point about it. It's saying, Trump, that's not your money. You know, Obama, I think, gifted him money. He put $1 billion on an airplane is what he did. What they're saying, what the Iranians are saying is it's not your money, it's our own money we want back. That's a good point they have. All right. Now let's talk about what happened the other day. I think I talked about it yesterday, so it was the night before. Okay. 4 Iranian drones came into the Hormuz Straits, or the Straits of Hormuz, shipping lanes, shipping areas. These drones were headed for maritime ships in the Persian Gulf. They were headed for civilian vessels. Okay. These are vessels that were not going to Iran and saying, oh, Mr. Iran Mullah, please give me permission to come in and pass through your waters, which are not your waters. You know, so that didn't happen. They didn't ask. The asking would probably involve tolls, TOLLS, of about $2 million a ship. They'd probably want in digital currency, so that didn't work out. They didn't pay that, obviously. American warships knocked down all 4 of these drones over open water, so nobody got hurt. Then the Americans attacked quite heavily with a combined force of fighter jets and these special drones working together. I believe the fighter jets control the drones. So the fighter jet sort of has a buddy. So if I'm getting this right, if another aircraft came at the American fighter jet, he could have the drone, 4 or 5 miles away, firing missiles at the aircraft and him doing it at the same time. So multiple missiles coming at that aircraft in different directions could be a real challenge, depending on the aircraft. What if the plane was controlling 3 drones? Now 4 aircraft are firing at the enemy fighter jet. That's tough. Maybe an Israeli jet or American jet or some British jet could handle that kind of a volume of aggression, but I don't think the others can. So the 4 drones went down, and then these jets with drones went after Iranian coastal radar on some islands and land that they had radar set up, which likely could be Chinese radar, and they smoked the radar. So I believe they've got Iran blind now. Let me explain blind. If Iran had Air Force that could fly over there and take a look at what was going on in the Persian Gulf, they might spot more maritime shipping vessels, maybe, right? Okay. But they don't have an Air Force. They have drones, but maybe they could send drones. But America would take the drones down thinking they would attack drones. So the Iranians now, without their radar, don't know about any ships passing through the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz, unless there's still remaining radar that America didn't knock down. But from the description of how long the attacks went on, I think they took it out. So that would leave Iran without any radar to attack these ships with and to attack the destroyers. Now, the 2 destroyers there apparently beat feet out of there when Iran was verbalizing threats to them. The Iranians said they did fire at the American ships, but America's CENTCOM is denying that. So it could go either way. I don't know who's telling the truth. I think the Iranians may have fired at that. I don't know. What's the difference? They didn't hit the ships. So this is one way of stopping the Iranians from trying to control the Persian Gulf. Without the radar, they're not going to know. Then to retaliate, they sent 7 missiles at Kuwait, and they sent some drones too, and they also attacked Bahrain. And according to America, the missiles all were taken down. According to the news I was picking up yesterday, there was some damage, I believe, at the Kuwait airport and in the street. They had some, it wasn't so clean. They had some problems with it, okay? So, last night I don't think there was trouble. Okay, so let me talk to you about some fake news going on. There was a port fire in Ecuador last night. It's the port of Manta, Manta, in Ecuador. A single ship of whatever nature we're not told caught fire. Fire spread, and 20 ships got affected. 20 boats. Now, they could be big rowboats for fishing. They could be much big. They could be 100-foot boats. I don't know what happened. Okay. People are saying because there were explosions, listen, when ships carrying fuel are caught, catch on fire, it's not so unusual to have an explosion. They have other things on board, you know. So the rumor was America attacked Ecuador, and these were narco boats, but this is completely unsubstantiated. And when the Americans with Trump attacked narco boats, they put it right out there in the news, and there's nothing. So this appears to be a fire of some source that we don't know. I'm not looking at terrorism here either. I don't think so. Um, so to say that America's continuing with peace talks with Iran and everything is looking rosy is an absolute lie. Iranians ain't going to sit down or listen to anything unless they get their 12 billion. And they have other demands. When you go to the peace talks after you give them $12 billion, there's nothing you can talk about with them except we won't attack you, you don't attack us, and that's it. The Iranians will do that because it'll buy them time to beef up their systems again. But they seem to be mentally or cognitively satisfied that they could handle America now. So they're attacking. Okay. The United States is also intending to not give Iran back their $100 billion or whatever the precise amount is. Like Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman, Jordan, Saudi Arabia are going to send in bills for the amount of damage they got already, which maybe it'll hit 100 billion and maybe it won't. And then Trump wants to reserve any of the leftover money that is still left for further damages to the Gulf states. But Israel can go drop dead. We're not going to give them stinking Jews any money to fix their damages. No, we'll just give it to the Muslims. I have a suspicion, Netanyahu is not a friend of Israel, believe me. I talk about that all the time. He's a friend of Netanyahu and the Satan bot Rich. That's it. So, the October 7th thing is so suspicious. And he's been fighting any investigation other than the one he does or he did. It's just too suspicious. So all of a sudden he gets involved. What happened is America didn't want Netanyahu coming over there. Then in September of 2023, Biden says, Netanyahu could come anytime. He's a great guy and all that. So the 23rd of September, Netanyahu goes over there. And there was a lot of leak of information that Hamas was planning to attack inside Israel on the ground. So it was Simchat Torah, one of their holidays, and all the guard are down. All the systems, there's untrained people in watchtowers at the border getting on the phone and the radio and screaming, we're getting invaded, and the soldiers at the other end were laughing at them, calm down, it can't be true. This was sick, okay? All the protections were gone. September 23rd, Netanyahu went to see Biden. Then he comes back and this happens. You think it's a coincidence or it was a put-up job? I'd say there's a huge amount of, massive amount of people in Israel that are wondering if it was a put-up job. It's just too weird. We wouldn't have all our defenses down like that. We never do. Okay? Hold on a second. Let's see what this is. could be a delivery. I don't know. Yeah, it might come today or tomorrow. I bought my wife a pair of cut-proof gloves so she could make some food. She asked me to get her. She didn't want to cut herself with it. I don't know what it is. It could be beef jerky. She makes beef jerky. She made such fantastic beef jerky the other day. Man, is it good. Bueller and Mom will attest to it. Okay, so then October 7th happens. All the guards are down. Normally, the soldiers and the tanks would have been there in about 7 minutes. So maybe it would have been bad day 15 minutes. I hate reliving this. I don't even want to do it. Let me just pass on. I was sitting outside about 5 in the morning watching all this happen. And, it pains me. So, this piece of crap Netanyahu was probably involved in something with Biden. That's what a lot of people think, and I think they're probably right. Can I prove it? No. I can't prove it. Is this what I believe? Yeah. Am I alone in this belief? Not at all. One of the things Naftali Bennett said, if he becomes prime minister, he's going to do an investigation on this. Now, I don't like that. I want an independent investigation, but maybe he wants to torpedo Netanyahu so he could stay in office longer and he'll actually tell the truth. We'll see. So, what I told everybody when this happened is this was all about destroying Iran. Because Iran and Russia, using BRICS, wanted to have the oil sold off the US dollar to break the back of America economically. And the United States did not like that. But Biden was like, So what happened is Trump got in, and Trump's not Trump's different. Okay, so the whole idea was to get Israel mad and then go after Iran. But the idea was to get rid of the proxies so Iran could be dealt with easier. See, Iran using the proxies against Israel, as the proxies would build up, they would use the proxies against Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Oman, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. Specifically, they would be using Syria, Iraq, mostly, and Hezbollah to some extent, not so much Hamas. So what happened is Bashar Assad fell in 11 days, ran to Russia with the money from Syria. Israel bombed all the bases in Syria, or 90% of them, and the weapons, supplies, and everything else, and he got nothing. And Iraq got a new leader, and they are not very much interested in having wars for Iran right now. Well, they say they will. They're not really doing much of anything about it. So then we see Israel and America repeatedly attacking Iran and running into resistance. Now, what I think they were trying to do was have Iran attack Israel with missiles while America would be feebly taking a few down with their destroyers and causing a lot of damage in Israel and causing perhaps 1 or 2 million people to leave Israel. They're looking to get people out of Israel to the point where there's almost no Jews left in Israel. Okay? Then they do basically a right of return for the Arabs, and then you would see Israel with 2 million Jews and 6 million Arabs, and then they would be pushing the Jews out steadily, and it would be over for the Jews and Israel. And that would be how Satan wants to do it. Okay? Every time Satan tries to have countries attack Israel, it doesn't work. But Satan is a dumbbell. So he's trying it again. And it's not working. It didn't work. So what went wrong here? Why didn't Iran just attack? Because Iran was mad at America. And they don't like the Gulf states because they want the Gulf states to listen to them. But the Gulf states aren't the same kind of Muslim as Iran. They're more Sunni. And they believe in kings and emirs and sultans and junk like that. The Shiites that Iran believes in have a position that there shouldn't be a king or anything like a king. The wealth of the country should be distributed amongst the people. And if you believe Iran does that, I have a bridge or a highway that connects New York to the moon, and you could buy it and drive on it. So they don't do that. They put the money in the military and their own pockets. So they started attacking the Gulf states. And by attacking the Gulf states, what are they trying to do? Well, stop the flow of 20 to 25% of the oil, counting themselves in this equation. So Trump got petrified because the oil stoppage there would be combined, at least temporarily, with the Houthis stopping the Red Sea, which is now the Houthis and Somalia stopping the Red Sea. If they kick it into gear, and that'll bring out perhaps 1/3 of the world oil is going to stop. Prices are not going to go up 1/3. They've already gone up more than that. Okay. If this happens, I'd say the least you'll see in oil is $200 a barrel, which is going to double your price at the pump in America and possibly Europe. Okay. It'll be really bad, but survivable. If it goes to 300 a barrel, it'll be about triple. That's not survivable. And some people say it could go to 500 to 1,000 a barrel. I don't see it at 1,000, but no forecaster would have ever predicted that Syria would fall in 11 days. So I don't know. We just don't know. People have done studies that the real price of an ounce of gold now, adjusted correctly for inflation, is $48,000, taking into account the low value of the dollar. It might even be at 50,000 now because the dollar keeps going down a little bit. So I believe Trump stopped the war because Iran was going to start hitting the oil fields, oil refineries, ports, piers, which are the transfer stations where the oil is that they load onto the ships and sell, blow that up. So Trump got nervous because he's the one that's going to get blamed for all the problems in the world if this goes down. So now Trump, in order to get the Gulf states calmed down, is saying we're going to give you the Iranian money to make your repairs as if they need the money. And if there's future damage, we'll also give you that. But he's only working with $100 billion, and that's a lot of damages for a lot of countries, so I don't know if it'll last, the money, but leaves Israel out of it. So they're just kicking Israel down the road. They don't care about Israel. If Netanyahu gets booted out of office legally, the next one is maybe not going to pay attention to Trump like Trump likes. Then he'll turn on Israel. People in Israel are not going to like this either, but Netanyahu will never say anything about it. In other words, I don't think the press is so free here in Israel. They're not going to have him on an interview and say, why did Trump pay the Gulf states and not us? And then Netanyahu's going to say, because he doesn't like the Jews. What do you think? That's what the actions speak. Don't listen to Trump's words. His actions are he doesn't like us. He'll never say that. So the fact that he's going to give this money to the Gulf states for past damages and future damages tells me he sees himself going back into the war. And the reason they couldn't get Iran to really hurt Israel is because of God, and the way God manifested it is he had the Arab states, Gulf states getting attacked by Iran. That's it. Let's make double sure I'm right about this. freezing Israel out of it. Trump says he's going to use the money that's been frozen that belongs to Iran for sanctions, which is about $100 billion spread out around the world. Period. Trump says he will use this money, give it to the Gulf states, the allies of Israel, for past damages from Iran in recent attacks, and also for future attacks. Period. It strongly appears that Israel will not be included in this receipt of the Iranian seized money. Am I correct or incorrect about this? AI says it seems that Israel would have a claim. Nonsense. It says Gulf states, and Israel is not a Gulf state. Let me try this with him. It says Trump is going to give the money to Gulf states that are allies. And as we know, Israel is not considered a Gulf state. My voice to text is saying GOLF, while I mean GULF. My reasoning is sensible, it says. If the proposal is specifically limited to Arab Gulf countries, then such as Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi, UAE, Qatar, it would also be Bahrain, I think, maybe not Oman, I don't know. Then Israel would not be included because Israel is not a Gulf state. Oh, I'm quite certain it's not going to be including Israel. I don't see why it would. Okay. They don't like us. So, just to reiterate, Iran started attacking the Gulf states, which was rather new and different and unexpected, especially with such vigor. And it scared the daylights out of America. Their plan went astray. And that's why Trump stopped, and he doesn't know what to do because Iran has a lot of missiles and is going to continue the attack. So he's got plans to use special forces to dismantle the missile sites and other things, I suppose. Now, if Trump is out of office, the new guy could publicly go to the press and say, Trump not giving us the money, just the Muslim states, he's anti-Semitic. And then what is Trump going to do? Probably say, I always intended to give them the money, but they never sent us an estimate of what the damages are. Or Netanyahu will say, no, he intended to give it to us. Nobody ever sent a claim in. What happens if Trump gets sent, if Netanyahu gets sent to jail for 8 or 10 years, which means he's likely going to die in jail with all his bad health? What happens then? Does Trump open up his mouth and talk? Does Netanyahu open up his mouth and talk? Does he threaten Trump? Does he tell the world what really is going on? He could have all this dictated on a drive, and if he goes to jail, it gets published. So, that could be a problem for Trump. The Pentagon raised the threat of Israel spying on the United States to its highest level amid war direction differences. In addition, the Times of Israel ran a story that Israel was spying on people like Witkoff to try to understand where America was going with the negotiations with the Iranians. That doesn't sound like everything is lovey-dovey, but this doesn't sound like Netanyahu would do it. He doesn't go around doing stuff like this. I don't think he did it. I don't think so. New York Times would run a story that's fake news, no problem, in my opinion. I don't think Trump would infuriate Netanyahu by doing this, because I don't think Netanyahu would infuriate Trump. He's trying to get Trump to help him stay out of jail, and I don't think he would do anything like this. I also think all he has to do is ask Trump what's going on, and Trump will tell him. The Iranian people are asking for America to arm them so they could fight against the mullahs. Well, this story is breaking at a real convenient time, so it might happen. Parachute weapons in, probably. Maybe fly them in, I don't know. What they would give them would be probably rifles with lots of ammo. Not that much, maybe 2,000 rounds per gun, something like that. 3,000, it wouldn't be 25,000 or anything like that. And maybe 3,000 rounds. They were given pistols. They were given anti-tank shoulder-fired weapons. Probably about it. Maybe give them smoke and tear gas for demonstrations, riots, but I don't think so. That's what they would give them. Now, there would be a small amount of sniper rifles, too. Maybe 100 or 200 or something. Maybe less. They would have to train those guys. It would take them a good, I'd say, 2 weeks to train them. They'll never be as good as a Marine sniper or a Navy SEAL sniper or anything like that, but they'll be good enough to bring death and destruction about to the enemy. They teach them probably one gun, one caliber, one gun, one scope, one caliber, one bullet for all purposes. So that trims the herd as to how much they got to learn. And then they teach them a little bit about windage and drop. Okay. Will they get hits? Yeah. It's not that hard. Many years ago, I bought a Springfield Arms, what was it, an M14, the 308 caliber. But I bought the advanced version, not the full sniper, but it had the targeting barrel, the target barrel and stuff. It didn't have a sniper trigger in it. And I put a scope on it. The scope was about $1,200 or $1,400. I put a heck of a scope on that thing. It worked in low light and everything. It was one of the scopes for the gun for military purposes. So the range I was using only went out to 300 yards. So the store used a laser to get it so it would put the bullet on the paper on the target, which is, a big target. And I went to the range, I sat down at a table, and I went at 300 yards. And I messed around with the scope until I got it to hit. And I got it hitting in the center about the size of a fist. I was there maybe 2 hours, I don't know. And I was just boom, boom, boom. They were all going in center like a fist. I said, okay, it's time to go home. This isn't so exciting. I couldn't go out 500 yards because the range stopped at 300. It was for hunting. Most hunters, that's about the furthest shot they're going to take. Snipers could go 1,000 yards, but that's a whole other, situation. I don't know if my scope, it would have been probably okay. I think it went to something like 8 or 10 power, someplace like that, that was it. I was a pistolero guy. I wasn't very much into these long guns. I had a few, you know. I had 223 pistols. I think I had one or two of them. They were selling it back then. They were about this big, and they shot a 55 grain bullet, the 5.56, at about 2,500 feet per second. Because you lose velocity every inch, you lose about 100 feet per second. So it went down from about 3,300 to 2,425 feet per second, but that was still enough to go through standard bulletproof vests, the soft ones, and it would pack quite a wallop, you know. The 5.56 is a very potent round, but I always liked the 308 much better. Or if you go back in time enough, the 30-06, which is so close to a 308. I think the 308 is more or less the NATO version of the 30-06. But those 180 grain bullets at the same speed of a 5.56 at 55 grains. So they're also 3,300 feet per second. So when they hit, they smack real hard, you know. You could do grizzly bear with a 30-06. You know, you wouldn't have that much trouble with it. As long as you didn't get a hollow point, you got a solid point, it would go right through the jerk, you know. If he was trying to kill you or something, you know, you might have to put a second round in him, but he's not going to be in good shape after the first round. If you get him anywhere in a good area, you know, he's going to be in bad shape. It'd probably penetrate 18 inches, something like that. That's a lot. And if you got him the second time, I'm sure he'd be in rough shape, you know. With a 5.56 shooting a grizzly bear, I think you'd have to be an idiot. I don't think you'd get anywhere with that. It doesn't have enough oomph, you know. It's the 308 at the same velocity is the way to go. Now, people that really want to go get a bear and they want to use something more effective, what they'll usually wind up doing is going to about a 300 grain hard bullet at a lower out, you know, at 2,700 feet per second. So they're going to take a drop in velocity and get a much more, well, the bullet will be a little wider too. They might get to a 410 or something like that. And it'll be a wider bullet and it'll have more, you know, be very dense. So you don't want it mushrooming. You want it going through, hitting bone and everything. And it'll do a more effective job, you know. You really wanted to drop a bear, use a 50 cal, you know. Other people use slugs, 12 gauge slugs. Now, if you go back in time, which I'd say is about 1998, they were selling double buck end slugs that were going about 1,700 feet per second. They're still out there. You gotta hunt like crazy to find them. They're out there. And the reason they curtailed, for the most part, selling these, although they still exist, is that at 1,700 feet per second, you're going through a bulletproof vest. So they cut this stuff down. But when it was that fast and a big honking 3-inch shell, 12 gauge, it would be very terminal for a bear. Even though it was a soft lead slug, they had hard lead slugs, and then they had other things like Brenke, where you had a smaller slug at a much faster speed, and you know, that was another thing that people would use, you know. But that wasn't really for hunting bear. This is really for protecting yourself from a bear. That's what I'm talking about. Speaking of protection of things, There's a new type of flashlight that is on the market now. Um, I'll explain to you what it does. Because some of you might want to, use flashlights for self-defense. Okay. So these flashlights are called an LEP, and it's laser excited phosphorus. So the thing has a blue laser inside it that it shines, and the phosphorus in this thing creates a very, very bright light. Okay. But it's different than the regular flashlights, so I need to explain it to you. You measure these in candela, not in lumens. When you're getting a regular broad flashlight that'll light up the road, it'll light up a piece of land, maybe 30, 40 feet if you got a big, powerful one with a big head, wide out hundreds of meters. These things get hot and they use a lot of power, and they can't run at high power very long. Maybe you'll get, a few seconds in some cases. Other cases you might get 30, 40, 60 seconds, okay? The amount of lumens that this uses is massive. So you're using 8,000 lumen, 13,000, 4,000. All right, these LEPs are extremely more powerful, and the amount of lumens that they're using is maybe 500, 800. So you can run these at high power for many minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And you don't have the heat build up and other stuff, because it's not burning a lot of lumens, because it's not throwing a broad beam, okay? It's throwing like a laser pointer, but not so tiny, So if you're gonna shoot it at something, this close, it may be like the tip of the finger. But if you are shooting at something or shining it at something at 15 feet or 20 feet, it's probably going to be as thick as a softball or maybe a cantaloupe, okay? Depending on what you got. But these things are extremely powerful, so they're just going to give you a light like this big, okay? But if you get it on somebody following you or trying to hurt you in their eyes, it's really going to hurt in their eyes, okay? Not that the regular ones that have the broad beam aren't going to hurt in the eyes, they will too. But these will have more advantages, like the run time is longer, stuff like that. So the LED lights, you're going to have to aim it at somebody. Where when you're using the conventional lights, if you get something that's like 4,000 lumen, it could be this big. It's going to have a broad beam. At night, you turn it on, it's going to run at 4,000 for maybe 8 seconds. Then it's going to drop to 1,000, which is going to be borderline, not trustworthy. But for that 8 seconds, if you put it in their face, or if you shine it at 10, 15, 20 feet, you're going to dazzle them, and they're going to turn away, close their eyes, and they're going to have after images. And that might last 1 or 2 minutes. The idea with this is you get away. Okay, you beat feet and get out of there. And it's going to be very difficult for this person to come run after you. with all this going on in their vision, you just get out of there. You shut the light off, it cools off, so it'll do another burst or two, and you get out of there. Okay. With the with the LEP, you might have to, you take your light out and you have to maybe spend 1 or 2 seconds getting it on the character, especially if he's moving, but you will get it on his eyes, and it will be rather punishing for his eyes, to the point where if you got a very powerful LEP and he didn't close his eyes really fast and turn his head away, you might cause permanent damage, maybe. It'd be rough, but it could happen. Now, some of these, they have one that's 7 point something million candela. Now that, if you got it in someone's eyes, would be completely insane. But it's the size of a thermos. You can't carry that around. So you can get some that are like about 7 inches long and like that, and maybe the head's a little bigger, for about 2.8 million candela or 3 million. Okay. Which, as you lower the power, it's going to be easier. So when you shine it on somebody, maybe at 20, 25 feet, it might even be more watermelon size or approaching a basketball, maybe even a basketball in size. So it's easier to get it on their face. Still a massive amount of power. And again, this thing's probably only going to have a few hundred lumen because it's just hitting a concentrated area. It's not lighting up the whole neighborhood. Okay. Now, we need to talk about it. What about those flashlights that light up the whole neighborhood with the wide beam? Well, when you get them with enough lumen and it's in a dim light situation, in other words, it's not 12:30 in the morning at the beach with the sun bright outside. When you're at the beach and the sun's bright outside, the people, everybody there, their eyes are adjusted down to the bright light. So you flash them with a flashlight, unless you have incredibly powerful light, you're probably not going to dazzle them or stun them that much. Maybe a little bit, okay, maybe not. But if you got that, a flashlight with a big head that had about 30,000 lumen, a wide beam, you'd probably have some effect at it. He wouldn't be able to look at you. The assailant wouldn't be able to approach you because you could keep getting the light on him. So he'd have to be approaching you without looking at you, which is pretty idiotic. So he's walking forward without looking at you. I don't believe he could force himself to keep his eyes open while the light's in his eyes. I don't think he could do that. Okay? With these LEPs, no way. Most of the time, your trouble's going to be at night. Okay? And when you're talking nighttime, with the wide beam with a lot of lumen, it works rather well. The dead bare bones minimum in my mind is 2,000 lumen. That's the minimum, okay? Minimum. I don't think you want to go under that. Is it the more the merrier? Well, the more lumens you go, the bigger they get. You could get maybe 7, 8, even 10,000 lumen with a flashlight like this that you could put in your pocket, maybe with a little bit bigger head. And yeah, would that be very effective? Yeah, very effective, Could you take 2 of these little 4,000 lumen flashlights and put duct tape on them and turn both on at the same time and hold them in your hand and have 8,000 lumen? Would that work? 100%. The numbers work. It would. Would it be harder would it give the guy more blinding effect or dazzling? No, I don't think so. most of the light is wasted with the wide beam. But you don't have to aim for the guy. All you have to do is face the direction he's in and turn it on, and you got him. So the amount of time to acquire your target is 0. You just got to turn it on. There's no target to acquire because it's a wall of light. So it's a mix. Am I going to buy an LEP flashlight? I don't think so. I don't want to have the very high-powered ones around the house because I don't see a need for them, and they could cause damage to the dog or myself or my wife, and I don't want it to mess with my eyes. The regular flashlights, even 50, 100,000 lumen, if you flashed it in your eye by mistake, what would happen? You'd be dazzled, have after images, and I don't know, within 2-3 minutes it'd be gone. Maybe you'd want to put an eye drop in or something, but you probably wouldn't need to do anything, just rest for a few minutes, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and be over with. The ultimate tool for this would be to get a laser, but these lasers in many countries are illegal. I would say if you got a 3-watt laser and you flash it in somebody's eye for a tenth of a second, you probably have a small degree of permanent damage, and they would be shot probably for a day or hours. They wouldn't see. You're talking about a weapon now, and you don't want to have that around yourself. You have to wear special laser glasses, even though you're not pointing at yourself, you're just aiming it, you're looking at that beam, and you could hurt your eyes. It's a dangerous thing. What do you want it's like saying, I'm going to buy myself a pet anaconda in my house, so if anyone breaks in my house, the anaconda will smother him, break his bones, and eat him. Then the anaconda likely might do that. But if the anaconda decides that he thinks you look tasty, he might eat you one day. Right? So what do you want to have an animal like that for? It's stupid. And that's how I look at the lasers. They're stupid because they could hurt you. They could hurt you. And then, you get a Chinese laser for $200 or something like that. They're going to send you a pair of glasses with it. They'll say, these are anti-laser glasses. Yeah, sure, that'd be a moron to trust those. You probably have to go out and buy a $150, $250 pair of laser glasses. What you got to do is go look at what the doctors that burn tattoos off people with lasers are using to protect their eyesight and that of the patient, and that's what you need. Well, that might not even be enough. You might need something more than that, but that's a very dangerous thing to have. It's not a wise thing to get. It's not a laser pointer. It's probably like 100, maybe 300 or 400 times more powerful than a laser pointer. These things a 3-watt handheld laser, well, it wouldn't be that handheld, maybe be like this or something, I don't know. It would probably put a dot on a mountain 10 miles away or 20 miles away if you could see it. It's like that, okay? And they don't want you running around with these things because kids will say, let's shine it at the pilot. And some guy goes by with his Delta plane with 300 people in it, and the kids are going like that. You don't want to have things like that, They're dangerous things, but these things are not dangerous. The LEP thing could be if you're stupid and you really shined it in your eye or something like that, but you could hurt an animal. The animal may stop and look at it like a deer in the headlight or something. I wouldn't want to do that. Hurt a bird or something. Why? I wouldn't. With the regular flashlights, you're not causing anybody any permanent damage, and you're getting the effect. You're dazzling them. They're getting an after image, which messes their vision up, and you can get out of there. Now, if you're talking about everything hits the fan, there's no more government. Okay, like what do I mean? Washington, D.C.'s in flames. It's all over, right? people are, leaving and go to Israel. I mean, it's happened. It's done, right? Or it could be in Europe or something where the country's had it. There's no more government, right? And people are coming around and they're trying to get in your house and loot or rape or plunder or whatever, and they break into your house and you're in your house and you take your flashlight and you're shining on them, okay? Then what could you do? Well, Bowie knife, baseball bat. But you never want to do this when the government's around, because they would call it murder. Because you disabled the person with the light, the person is no longer a threat to you. Why'd you kill him? Okay? So if there's no more government and someone breaks into your house, it's a safe assumption that they're just going to kill you. So you just use that, and when they're blinded, you, or a baseball bat or whatever you're going to do. Yeah. So the flashlight, any of these flashlights, you don't need an LED. The regular ones will work just fine. In a house, it's never going to be bright like out in the street at noon, so you can blind somebody with it. So the LED lights are starting to become popular, but I don't particularly think they're a great choice. You got to remember they got a lot of power and a lot of runtime, but you got to aim them, okay? And when you're aiming it, the guy might turn his head away before you get to, The others, all you got to do is switch it on, boom. You don't have to aim. It just, if he's behind you and you point it this way, it's not going to affect him. But if he's behind you and you turned it on and went like that, just held it over your shoulder, you'd get him, So it's got advantages. Okay, so I just wanted to cover that because I talk about flashlights. Now, pepper spray and flashlights make a good combination, and that is not going to get you into any major problem. Oh boy, I don't know why the battery, I don't know what happened. I didn't charge this last night. I don't know what happened. All right, we'll charge it now. Not the broadcasting computer, the one I'm using for notes. Okay. So let us. Okay, let's go to the one more time on the translation. So, the Masoretic text, the Hebrew Old Testament, the oldest one is 900 AD, and we got Septuagints going back to 250 BC, which is more than a millennium than the Hebrew Bible. So why is it that the church people or the Christians have these old books and the Jews don't? The Jews don't come up with the Septuagint, which was written by Jews. They don't cost that up. So what's going on with that? Why is that this way? I don't trust the Jewish Old Testament. That's why. You could call me crazy. I don't trust it. And the New Testament they're using goes to the year 1550, which isn't very old. So I don't like it. Okay. Here's how the translations were done. They were based directly on the raw translation of the Codex Sinaiticus. Every word has been evaluated through the strict philological pipeline, utilizing the secular semantic range found in contemporary documentary papyri, contemporary to the day of the Septuagint and when this was done, contemporary then. So the papyri, that's the so-called paper they wrote on. It wasn't really paper. Josephus, who was not a religious work, and Stephanus' classical reconstructions, deliberately bypassing later, in other words, later dated ecclesiastical or church translation traditions. Because the church is using manuscripts and stuff that I think stink. Okay? Notable spelling traits specific to this scribe, such as itasiems like the word signal. We'll get into the word signal later. They could be spelling errors. Instead of he wrote signal, it could have been sign, although the meaning is very similar. You use the sign to signal, it's pretty close. Have been accounted for maintaining accuracy. Okay, to be specific. All right. So now we're going to do Revelation chapter 6, secular translation. And, all right, so it goes in verse 1. And I observed when the young ram broke one of the 7 seals. Now, I want to look at the King James, KJV, and see what this says there. I think it's going to say lamb, but I want to look. And I saw when the lamb opened one of the seals. Okay, you see, you got to review this and fix it, because I'm using secular, and using secular, it's going to look at it and say, oh, that's a ram. It's not going to say, oh, that's the Lamb of God, Yeshua. See, it doesn't bring you there, because I don't want to have church doctrines incorporated into the translation. And it's very difficult to get away from that. But when you use AI, it can do that. Okay. And I observed when the lamb broke one of the 7 seals, and I heard one of the 4 living creatures speaking with a sound like thunder. Well, that's a little new. He had a heck of a big voice, huh? Forward, it said. Okay. And I looked, and he might have been telling him to look forward. Okay. And I looked and observed a white horse, and the rider sitting upon it held a bow and a civic crown. That's an interesting word, civic crown, was granted to him. Well, I guess that would imply his crown was that over men or countries or something. My guess. And he marched out conquering. Yeah, that's what it would mean. Conquering specifically to achieve total victory. And when he broke, now I don't know who that specifically would be. Okay. And I looked and observed a white horse, and the rider sitting on it held a bow, and it said, oh, we just did that. Conquering specifically. Okay, now we're in verse 3. And when he broke the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, "Forward." And another horse emerged, fiery red. The fiery red is new. And to the rider sitting upon it was granted to seize peace from the land. That sounds like the land of Israel to me. So that people would butchering, people would butcheringly slaughter one another, and a large combat knife was delivered to him. I don't know, 70 AD maybe, because they were killing each other, eating the children. I don't know. This is very hard to pin this down, but it changes. You'll see. And when he broke the third seal, I heard the living creature say, "Forward." And I looked and observed a black horse, and the rider sitting upon it, and a pair of market scales in his hand. So you would go to the store and you would want to buy something, they'd put it in the scale, get a weight, and charge you by the weight. They do that today, but they have different scales today. And I heard what sounded like a proclamation from the middle of the four living creatures, saying, "A single drying measure of wheat for a day's wage, and 3 dry measures of barley for a day's wage. But do not damage or fix the prices of the olive oil and the wine." That's different, and I don't know exactly how to interpret it. Olive oil would be symbolic of the anointing, and the wine would be tied to communion. And of course, the barley or the wheat would be for the bread for communion, too. That's all I can add to this, or illuminate it, I should say. And when he broke the fourth seal, I heard the voice of the fourth living creature saying, "Forward." And I looked and observed a pale green horse, and the one sitting on top of him was named Corpse. The one sitting on top of him was named Corpse, and dash destruction. Body of destruction, maybe, I don't know. And the underworld accompanied him, and legal authority was granted to them over a quarter of the land to execute the long sword by starvation, by lethal epidemic, and by the wild beasts of the terrain. And that could be the whole world, too. Verse 9, and when he broke the fifth seal, I observed beneath the sacrificial platform, that would be the offering area, um, where they do the offerings, the brazen altar thing, and over there. The physical vitalities of those who had been slaughtered on account of the edict of God and the edict of God and oh, it's moving. Okay, let me get back on this here. Oh, this thing moved on me again. Oh, nightmares. All right, we'll have to get back into it. I'll find my place. Okay, those who had been slaughtered on account of the edict of God and on account of the public testimony which they maintained, and they yelled with a loud shout, saying, "Until when, absolute master, unpolluted and reliable?" Do you refuse to sit in judgment and exact legal vengeance for our blood from those who reside permanently upon the land? And a long white tunic was given to each individual, and they were instructed to cease their activities for a short time further until their fellow servants and their associates were killed. Until their fellow slaves and their associates who were destined to be executed, just as they had been, should finish their designated term. That makes things pretty clear compared to what we're used to. Verse 12, and I observed when he broke the sixth seal and a massive earthquake occurred, and the sun turned black, and the coarse-haired cloth and the entire moon became like blood. Okay, that is the Zechariah 10, the end of recompenses and the beginning of redemption. So if you want to get an anchor point, number 12, verse 12, that's that. So we're slightly before 12 now, okay? And the stars of the sky dropped to the earth. Now this verse 13, 70 years later. This is the second 70 of Daniel 9:24, and this is the time Yeshua is going to return. And that's the sign of Yeshua returning. Actually, the moon doesn't give its light, the sun doesn't give its light, and the stars fall and they don't give their light. So 13. Then you could read that in the book of Joel, chapter 2. And the stars of the sky dropped to the earth, just as a fig tree drops its unripened winter figs when buffered by violent wind. Violent wind knocks it off. And the sky split wide open like a papyrus scroll being rolled shut, and every mountain and island were dislodged from their foundations, and the regional kings of the earth and the high magnates, and the military commanders of legions, and the wealthy and the physical power, and every slave and free citizen hid themselves in caverns among the rocks of the rock formations of the something. I don't know what it said. Okay. And they shouted to the mountains and to the rock formations, collapse over us and conceal us from the presence of the one sitting upon the official seat, and from the fury of the young ram, which would be the lamb. So he's talking about, now, when does that happen? Let's go back and try to get a handle on this. Verse, this iPad. Okay, verse 12. Okay, the sun goes black, the moon becomes blood. That's your, just before Yeshua is going to appear in the clouds, seated at the right hand of Jehovah, I believe. The Lord said to my Lord, sit down at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. And I don't believe at this point in time the enemies were the footstool. So verse 13, and the stars of the sky dropped to the earth, just as a fig tree drops its unopened winter fruit, buffeted by a violent wind, and the sky split wide open like a papyrus scroll, and every mountain and island were spread, and the regional kings of the earth. And so when you get into 13, you're seeing the stars dropping to the earth. That's the end of Gog and Magog. You're getting towards like Revelation, 19. All right. This thing's having charging issues, but okay. Uh, so we're past the redemption, we're past the falling away, you know? So we're just heading, into the return of Yeshua. So, these iPads, they don't last long. That's the problem with them. When you get them at first, they're pretty good. But this one's a good 3 years, I think, and it ain't pretty good anymore. It gives you trouble all over the place. All right. See, that's stopping the charging, starting the charging for no good reason. All right, maybe if I move forward, these things are just, they're good and they're not good. For doing the translation, I'm going to go with computers, not these things. So, now we're in verse 16, and they fall and cover us, okay, because the monumentous day of their fury has arrived, and who possesses the power to stand fast? Okay, they don't have the power. So that's what it's talking about. Okay. It's very difficult to go back in time and try to place what's going on and where and when, and it's easy to make a mistake. When did this start? Probably after Yeshua rose from the dead. It could be. He observed a white horse, rider sitting on it. Now, it could be that it started in 1948 or 1917. It could be that too. So I don't want to go in and speculate, because it's not going to do us much good. It's water under the bridge, and I can make mistakes, and it's not clear enough for us to get it. So we got an anchor point at verse 12, and we know that everything that comes after verse 13 is after, the 70 years is over. So, okay, and I'd rather stay with that so we have it right. So we know we're just coming up to verse 12. Okay? Now, we're going to go into Matthew 24. And things will be a lot clearer here than in Revelation 6. Okay. Same type of translation, verse 1. And you know what? I'm going to take a quick break for a minute and come back. Okay? I got to take the phone because I'm getting a delivery. See, I don't even touch it and it turns on and off. It's such junk. Well, maybe you guys can pray for the iPad. Seriously. Oh, let's see what this is. I don't have enough charge, so I can't unplug this thing. A little bit longer, I'll have enough charge. Okay. Maybe I could stop it from doing this. I don't know. Let's see if it's maybe the plug is loose or something. I'll try a different plug. I'll reverse that if I can. I don't know. Maybe that'll help. Okay, verse 1. And when Yeshua exited the temple, this is Matthew 24, the temple complex, he was walking away, and his students approached to point out to him the stoneworks of the temple complex. But he answered and said to them, do not observe all these things. Assuredly, I tell you, under no circumstances will a stone be left here upon another stone that will not be completely dismantled. Okay. So the Wailing Wall that they talk about in Israel is not the Wailing Wall. It's actually a wall around the Roman fort that was very close to the temple. So the rabbis, by having the people stay there and pray 24 hours a day and calling it the wall, are doing that to show the people that Yeshua was a false prophet. Of course, why would Yeshua care about a wall around the Roman fort? That was not in the conversation he had. The Roman fort wasn't in it. Okay, so, and as he sat upon the ridge of Olives, that's the Mound of Olives. It's a third of a mile east of the Temple Mount. His students approached him privately saying, tell us, when will these things occur? What is the signal, that sign, we would say, sign of your arrival and of the conclusion of the current epoch, the current age, the conclusion of the age, the end of the age. The next age has everlasting life. Okay? The age is over when the trumpet blows, the sun goes dark, and the moon turns to blood, and Yeshua appears in the clouds, not returning first, just appearing, and we get everlasting life. That's the end of the age. And Yeshua answered and said to them, see, it's much clearer here. And Yeshua, because the Jews skewed it up to conceal Yeshua and all that, and then the church, they picked up on it. They want to confuse people, or they're confused, or they want to confuse people, or both. And Yeshua answered and said to them, see to it that no one misleads you. For many will arrive using my name, saying, I am the anointed leader, and they will mislead many people. You see, they make that so vague in the King James and the English Bibles that you think it means many people are going to come and tell you that they're Yeshua. That's not what he's saying. He's saying that no one mislead you, for many will arrive or come using my name, saying, I am the anointed leader, and they will mislead many people. They come and they say Yeshua is the leader, and then they teach you bad doctrine. And you are bound to hear of military engagements and reports of military deployments. Isn't that crystal clear? Military engagements is fighting, not necessarily a war, is it? No. And reports of military deployments. That's not a war either. An engagement could be a war, but doesn't have to be a war. You got it? See how much clearer we got it? See that you are not thrown into a panic, for it is required that these things take place, but it is not yet the final boundary. The boundary is not yet the end of the age. Zechariah 12 would be the boundary, I believe. For nation will rise up against nation, and regional administration against regional administration. So the mayor of New York is against Trump, and the governor of California is against Trump. You got it? That's an example of this, just one example. And there will be structural earthquakes and famines from place to place. So there won't be famines all over, everywhere at the same time. I would take that to mean. Okay. But these things are merely the opening stage of birth pains. Then they will deliver you over into severe confinement, and they will execute you, and you will be hated by all the populations on account of my name. And at that time, many will be tripped up and caused to fall, and they will betray one another into severe confinement. Severe confinement, I don't know if they mean jail or something else here. I don't know. And this could be talking about stuff that happened in the distant past, too. Well, remember verse 8 says, but all these things are merely the opening stage of birth pains. Birth pains. Then they will deliver you over into severe confinement, and they will execute you, and you will be hated. Now, this could be in the past, and I think it is, okay? Because we're in recompenses, and that's the payback on the nations. I don't believe that we're going to see any persecution. How far did Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, Iraq, Syria, and Iran get with attacking us? Not very far. And they were attacking us like 5 countries at a time. No. And at that time, many will be tripped up and caused to fall. And they will betray one another into severe confinement. I think this was like 70 AD kind of thing. And many false informants will arise and will mislead many people. It could be a prophet type word, but informants and prophets are pretty distant, you know. But it might mean prophet in more of a churchy sense. And because the lawlessness is to be multiplied, the social affection of the majority will grow cold. Yeah, they're growing cold now, we know that. But the one who holds his ground to the final boundary, this person will be brought safely through. So it says, hold your ground. This is pretty foreign from what the church wants us to read or what they use. And this is based on the real New Testament going back a long time. Not something from 14 or 15 or 1600 or 1700 or anything like that. And this public proclamation of the regime will be heralded through the entire inhabited world as a legal deposition to all the nations, and then the final boundary will arrive. That's the end of the world. And this public proclamation of the region will be heralded throughout the entire inhabited world. So that means that we need to have a real gospel to spread, not the bad translations. Now we're in verse 15. Therefore, when you observe the polluting desecration that causes devastation, which was stated through Daniel, the spokesperson, standing fast in a dedicated place, let the person reading take note. Then let those in Judea flee into the hill country. That would be 70 AD. Let the, we don't see this in Zechariah 12. It could be opening, it could be the Gog and Magog days where they open up, where he opens up the mountain, but this isn't the same descriptor, so it doesn't lend itself to that at all. Let the person upon the roof, Tereth, not go down to secure their property from his house. Let the person in the open field not turn back to retrieve his outer garment, but it will be brutal for those who are pregnant and those nursing infants in those days. This is when Yeshua told them, when you see the armies around Jerusalem, get out of town. So he's saying, when you see the armies, run, because they're going to move fast. They're moving in. They're not going to go slow. That's why he was telling them, split. Don't go and get your stuff. Just run. Okay? Get out of there. And let the person in the open field not turn back to retrieve his outer garment. Just saying, get out of there. But it will be brutal for those who are pregnant those nursing infants in those days. Therefore, clear your path so that your escape does not occur during a storm or during a day of rest. I think clear your path would be to pray. That's how I'm interpreting this. A day of rest is Sabbath. For at that time there will be a massive crisis, such has not occurred from the launch of the organized world until the present moment. So, and never will occur again. Yeah, it was so bad, you know. And if those specific days had not been cut short, no living flesh would survive, but on account of the hand-picked individuals, those days will be cut short. That's the elect, I'm rather certain. At that point, if anyone says to you, look, here is the anointed leader, or there is, do not believe it. The anointed leader is Yeshua, for he's saying in those days. I'm going to unplug this, give it a rest with the beeping. I got enough charge. The other charger seems to work better for some reason. I don't know. Pray for this thing. You can see what I put up with this. They're good for 18 months, and then they start giving you trouble, and they're too expensive. I'm not like these churchianity guys that got 400,000. You got 400,000 people. You're going to have about 1% giving you offerings, so that's going to be 1,000 times 4. That's 4,000 people. And they're going to give you probably about $20-$30 a month. So you run the numbers, that's how they're living. Plus, they sell things to you. I can't do that. I can't make merchandise out of God's people. I could only go on free will offerings. And I never get that big because there's not that many people that want to hear the true gospel. They don't want to hear the truth. Okay, verse 20. Therefore, clear your path so that your escape does not occur during a storm or during a day of rest. Okay, we covered that. The hand-picked individuals. Now I'm on 23. at that point, if anyone says to you, look, here is the anointed leader, or there he is, do not believe it. See, they say Christ today. Christ means Mashiach, which means anointed. They don't even know that. Verse 24. For counterfeit leaders and false informants will be raised up, and they will exhibit massive signs and wonders so as to mislead, if possible, even the hand-picked individual, the very elect. So they don't really get deceived, but they try to deceive. The very elect don't get deceived. They might temporarily believe something, but it won't last. Look, I have given you advance notice. Therefore, if they say to you, look, he is out in the wasteland, do not go out. That would be like the desert, probably. Or, look, he is in the private quarters, do not believe it. For just as lightning flashes out from eastern regions and lights up all the way to western quarters, in this manner will be the arrival of the Son of Man. He's going to appear in the clouds like lightning from the east to the west. Wherever the dead, now it's jumping on me. Oh, it's jump bucket. Okay. I don't know if witchcraft is a viable thing to do. I mean, we could try it. I don't think they can do witchcraft on an inanimate object. I don't know. Okay. B'Shem Yeshua Mashiach, I cancel any witchcraft or sorcery directed at any of these technical computer or phone devices. It's all null and void for all time, shall never return, or even anything similar to it shall never return again, B'Shem, or come back again. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, and you can agree with that. I don't know, we'll see what happens. Therefore, clear your path so that your escape does not occur during a storm or outside. No, we covered that. Where was I? 23, maybe? I'll go 24. For counterfeit leaders will rise, where counterfeit leaders and false informants. An informant is, I think it's like a phony prophet, they're calling it informant, will be raised up, and they will exhibit massive signs and wonders so as to mislead, if possible, the hand-picked individuals. Okay, now we're in 28. Wherefore the dead carcasses there, the vultures will be gathered together. I'm glad it uses the word vultures. Gathered together. And immediately following the crisis in those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not yield its illumination. See, this is the time Yeshua returns, right? The end of the second 70. The beginning of the second 70 would be the sun goes dark and the moon turns to blood. The end of it is the sun goes dark, the moon goes dark, and the stars fall, don't give their light. Okay? Will be darkened and the moon will not yield illumination, and the stars will drop from the sky, and the governing forces of the skies will be shaken. That's the governing forces of the powers of the air, the demons. They're going to be really shaken. And at that point, the signal or the sign of the Son of Man will manifest in the sky. So the signal of him is going to manifest in the sky. That's him appearing in the clouds. That's not the return to earth, obviously. Manifest in the sky. And all the tribes of the land, well, they got that right, that's Israel, will beat their breasts in grief, that's mourning, and they will see the Son of Man arriving on top of the clouds of the sky. Again, he's not coming down on the earth. Where's New Jerusalem, you know? Where's the beast and the false prophet getting thrown in the lake of fire, right? Okay. It's too soon for that, that's why. And an immense splendor. He comes with power and immense splendor. And he will dispatch his couriers with a loud trumpet blast. Or there's going to be a blast of a trumpet when this happens. So that'll wake you up. And they will round up his handpicked. Don't wake up and say, oh, I can't believe, is this really happening? Is this true? Is it a hoax? Believe it, you know? Now, let me check this message. I'm sorry. Hold on. Okay, and they will round up his hand-picked individuals from the four winds and from the extremities of the skies to their other extremity. Now, this is likely the angels. But his couriers, probably angels. Now learn this answer from the, it could be the hunters rounding them up too, the fishers and the hunters, which could be you all, you know, it could be that too. I have to just throw that out there, okay? Now learn this analogy from the fig tree. As soon as his branches become tender, and sprouts its leaves, you recognize that the summer harvest season is near. In the same way, when you observe all these things, recognize that it is close at hand, right at the entry doors. Read again. Now learn this analogy from the fig tree. As soon as his branches become tender and sprout its leaves, you recognize that the summer harvest season is near. I would say we're in summer harvest season. Is near right now. In the same way, when you observe all these things, recognize that it is close at hand, right at the entry doors. When you see the moon turn to blood and all that, that's it. It's happening already. So, yeah, we're at the, you know, any time now. In other words, it's at the doors any time now. I sure pretty quick. I mean, we need a little bit more work in Zechariah 12:10, but that could pop up in one day. You know, a few more things to happen, and you know, more countries to turn against us in the siege. There's already, like I would say, a siege. Assuredly, I tell you that this specific generation will under no circumstances pass away until all these things take place. Well, that's us. The sky and the earth will pass away, but my statements will under no circumstances pass away. Now we're in 36. But concerning that specific day and hour, no one has tracking knowledge, not even the couriers of the skies. Couriers of the skies is angels. So it's angels. Nor even the Son, except the Father alone. For just as the days of Noah were, in this manner will be the arrival of the Son of Man. The days of Noah. Now it says the arrival of the Son of Man. That could mean the appearing in the sky, or maybe more likely him coming to earth. But probably, I think that's applicable to both, that they're not going to believe. They're just going to get cut off. They don't get it. They don't wake up. I don't see signs of any of these people waking up. They come in here, they hear it, and what do? They run away. They're finished with me. They reject me. They don't want to hear it. All they want to hear is their King James or their NIV, and how could I be wrong about reading this Bible all these years? I couldn't make that mistake. Pastor Bob would know. These are the many that are called and few are chosen. They're not the hand-picked. They're not the chosen. They're not the elect. That's why they're happy with another gospel and another Jesus. That's why they don't bear good fruit. They don't care about it. It's not important to them. What all that matters to them is what they can get out of it. For as they were in those days before the cataclysm, eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day Noah, which is really Noah, entered the wooden barge. I like wooden barge better than the ark. And they remained completely unaware until the cataclysm arrived and swept everyone away. In this manner will be the arrival of the Son of Man. Arrival can be him up in the clouds. That could very be it too. At that time, the men will be out in the field. One is taken along, and the other is left behind. Two women will be grinding grain at the hand mill. One is taken along, and one is left behind. Therefore, stay awake, because you do not know which specific day your master is arriving. But grasp this piece of logistics. If the house owner had known which watch of the night the thief was arriving, he would have stayed awake and would not have permitted his house to be turned through. Tunneled through. So they dug in under the house to break in or something. Went under the wall and came up through the floor. They made like a little trench or something. On account of this, you must also prove to be prepared, because the Son of Man arrives at an hour you do not anticipate. Who then is the reliable and strategic slave whom the master stationed over his household staff, to distribute their rations at the proper time? "46 is where I'm at now. Profitable is that slave whom his master, upon arriving, finds acting in this exact manner. Assuredly, I tell you, he will station him all over his corporate assets. Put him in charge. But if that malicious slave should say in his heart, my master is taking his time, and he begins to physically beat the fellow slaves and eats and drinks with the chronically drunk, the master of that slave will arrive on a day he does not expect, and at an hour he does not recognize. And he will cut him completely off and assign his designated lot with the pretenders, where there will be weeping and grinding of teeth. No, that's the bad place. I was just reading the translation notes. It was giving me some. That's as best as I could do so far to get a good manuscript, a good translation. you can see the difference is pretty big. And when it gives you more clarity, and the extra clarity fits with the correct doctrines, as you know. Where the English translations are usually so vague, it's very difficult. Now, the Masoretic text is better than the English translations, but I don't trust the Pharisees and the Sadducees of that era. You know. And there's no good reason why they don't have any manuscripts older than 900 AD that I'm going to buy into. I believe they cooked the books, and that's not a great translation. Obviously, we know we can get enough out of our Bible to get saved. And cast demons, pray for healing, many things. But when it comes to prophecy, which is very important, that's who Satan makes war with. Spirit of Yeshua, which is prophecy. That's what I'm teaching, the prophecies of Israel. And that is something Satan doesn't want people to know. Okay, so that's what I got for today. I could jump into the live stream and see if we got anybody with questions or something in there. Someone says they support Trump 100%. So you support Trump giving the Muslim states the money to repair the damages as Iran did, but not Israel, when Israel did perhaps 35, 40%, or even 50% of the damage to Iran. None of these Muslim states did as much work as that. So you could care less about Israel, I suppose. Good. We know where you stand. All right, I'll do a prayer for us. My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I pray for me and my wife and all the true believers and their households that we would have your strength, stamina, and endurance, your healing and recuperative power would flow through us, healing us as needed. And for us and our animals and pets, we'd be safe, secure, happy, healthy, and whole. And I pray for the peace of Yerushalayim. I pray that if anyone needs a place to live, a job, or they need clients or customers for their business, they find them. I pray all of us have adequate finances and then some extra. I pray we know the Bible better and understand the Bible better. I pray for more faith and wisdom for us. And I pray you resolve our problems for us. And I submit this to you, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And now I'll do some spiritual warfare, so it'll be a little different. My Heavenly Father, Jehovah, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach, I loose off of me and my wife, all the true believers, our households and families. I loose any unclean spirit out of these people immediately, never to return unto them again. And I loose off of any and all of these people any witchcraft or sorcery or spells coming from any unclean spirits or any people serving unclean spirits is loosed off of all of us, never to return again exactly the same or even close or similar, never return again. B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. And I pray you make these things so, my Heavenly Father, B'Shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay, so I'm going to close out here. I hope you got something out of this. And I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach and keep, spiritual warfare. Wait. Okay. Continue demon tossing everybody that is an elected or appointed official of the government in Israel and every employee of every government agency in Israel. Toss them. Try to do it daily if you can. Toss all the rabbis in Israel. Toss everybody that earned more than 3 million shekels a year during the last 5 years. Toss again. Toss anybody who earned more than 3 million shekels in a given year during the last 5 years. Toss anybody that earned more than 3 million shekels a year during any of the past 5 years. And that's your sake, God's sake, are causing the problems here for Israel. So let's keep doing that every day, and you'll see changes. And that's simple, it's easy, it's not complicated, okay? So please agree with the prayers that I've been making and agree with, all of this other stuff too, that I'm coming up with, the spiritual warfare. And it'll work out. Just agree with it if you're a true believer, okay? And I send my shalom to all those who love Yeshua HaMashiach, and I'm out.